Hello my friends of the art. Today we are once again focusing our attention on a truly special blade. And this time I would like to introduce you to a Falchion. And the special thing is not only its unique construction, but also the fact that this blade is not a modern reconstruction by one of our well-known craftsmen, but was purchased at an auction house for a high sum and passed into a private collection a few years ago. I am therefore delighted to be able to take a closer look at this piece. And I will say it right at the beginning, even if I would say from my gut that it is real, I can't really say from my own perspective whether this piece is truly original, because I'm neither qualified to judge this, nor do I have the necessary information to confirm this. What I do know is that there are very few examples of this type of blades in museums today, such as the Met in New York, the Netherlands or Paris. So if I consider that this piece is real, then the condition would be exceptionally good and truly unique. But what the video is mainly about is taking a closer look at the functionality of this weapon and taking a closer look at the design. First of all, let's take a closer look at the shape. As you can see, unlike most falchions, the sharp edge on the inside of the blade curve. The entire convex back is blunt and has a solid, strong spine. And here you can see a hollow groove takes some of the weight out of the blade. The tip is blunt all around, but very sturdy. The length is considerable and the material thickness at this point is noticeably thicker than the blade itself. And look at this wonderful point. And there's also no sharp back edge in the upper area, as it's often found on long knives, or in German langes Messer. The handle has typical Gothic features of the early 14th century. There is inlay work in the pommel and the back was underlaid with a small block of, I assume, brass. It's really amazing how good the wood and leather still look. It's hard to say whether it's still the original, only a C14 radiocarbon dating would help here. But take a look at this. You can still easily recognize the patterns of some lilies on the handle. That's incredible. The metal is generally covered with rust spots, but the substance is in a very good condition. Even the blade still seems very sharp to me. So let's measure the whole thing. So the total length is 95.2 centimeters. And the blade length exactly 77. The point length is approximately, let's say, 19 centimeters. The blade itself at the widest point I measure 7.1 centimeters. Directly at the guard 5 centimeters. The hilt itself has a width of 21.5 centimeters. The handle length is 11.2 and the pommel has a diameter of 5 centimeters and 6 millimeters. Thickness is 3.4 centimeters. The fuller ends at 48 centimeters. The weight is an impressive 1,468 grams. As far as I know, this specimen is larger and heavier than all other examples on display in museums today. So let's go outside and swing the sword carefully and see how it feels. All in all, of course, I was very careful and didn't want to swing it forcefully because I didn't want to damage the fragile handle. But it also suited the weather, as you can see. I had to be very careful anyway, it was already pretty slippery. Right from the start I noticed the dominance, the head heaviness of the blade, as with a typical slashing weapon of a mace. At the same time, the Falchion also has sword characteristics, for example, a certain flexibility and dynamic handling. Of course, many swords are top-heavy and give us dominance in the bind and a strong position in the center, but here the top heaviness is clearer and immediately indicates a different function. I therefore think that the Falchion was rather unsuitable for binding. Not entirely, but I prefer to leave that to the typical one-handed swords that were available in plenty from this period. Here it quickly becomes clear that the blow as such has priority. similar to the Dussaker saber, and Falchions are slowly moving in this direction. But while the dussak and the saber basically have the cutting edge on the other, convex side and no clear widening like falchions to increase the top heaviness, the purpose of this later development is rather in continuous cutting sequences. Accordingly, the shape of the blade of a classic saber helps to make one blow after another in a light-footed and energy-saving manner. But with this design, however, I find the blows tends to be more axe-like, somewhat cumbersome. But this does have its advantages, because if we look at the edge, the purpose here seems to be chopping rather than cutting. The impact angle here is designed so that the blade has a strong structural cleaving purpose. If you look at the contemporary pictures, you quickly realize that the use was purely military and against armed men, and that a classic duel was not the purpose of this weapon anyway. However, we must of course always be careful when drawing such conclusions. In the early 14th century there were very few illustrations of duel or Bloßfechten fencing anyway, apart from the Tower Fencing book or much later the Nuremberg House book. In other words, at this time there were generally more warlike depictions than courtly duel situations without armor. Nevertheless, in my opinion, this weapon belongs on the field, just like a battle sword later in the 16th century, and not in a judicial duel or in a fencing school. These weapons are simply too crude and brutal for that. It therefore stands to a reason that the splitting effect of the blows in combination with this extremely stable point indicates a use against armored men. It is easy to imagine that the penetrating effect of the cutting edge at the upper corner or the point could well have prevailed against armor. The point could also have had a kind of chain-breaking effect to attack the neck, or simply found its way into the half-sword handling in a place such as the armpit, waist or helmet slit. And by the way, the chest was not an option at this time, as it was reinforced by so-called lentners or plate skirts. I also noticed that if you turn the blade and use the blunt outer edge, it provides a strong striking edge and can repeatedly strike helmets, for example, which is certainly emphasized as a proven method against armed men in later combat books. Keyword Mordschlag. The effect of a blunt, powerful blow on a helmet should not be underestimated. It is not only loud as hell, but can also cause the recipient to stagger. Moreover, turning the classic sword hilt is no problem at all. We can switch effortlessly from the blunt side to the sharp side, just as we need to. If we compare and look at a long knife or langes Messer, we also see the disadvantage of a knife handle construction, where turning is more difficult or unfavorable. The nagel of the handle interferes with the thumb grip and no longer protects the outside of the hand when turning. Okay, well, disadvantage is a bit harsh. You don't do that with a knife, right? But again, it emphasizes the clever construction of the Falchion and the advantage of a classic sword handle in combination with such a blade shape. I would really like to have a reconstruction to test its use in sparring. I think I will give it a try. All in all, this type of blade appealed to me directly. I must say I'm excited about the sword and the subject is far from over for me. So, we have now reached the end of the video. What do you think? What do you think of such a construction? I would be happy to read your opinions and thoughts. If you want more content of this kind, leave me a like and a sub, because soon we will continue with a very interesting piece from the year 1600. Stay tuned.